people across the country. And you know, I thought, is the miracle that occurred, is it a miracle that Nick lives? And it's a miracle took place? But if God called Nick home because now was Nick's time, would that mean the miracle didn't take place? And as I was praying to God and working through some of this, and this relates to the households that we're all called to lead and be a part of, and I felt God was saying to me, Roy, the miracle is that I am the God of the universe, and right beside you, when it's this, and when it's this, and when it's this, and on the way up, and on the way down. That's the miracle. The miracle isn't always that it ends happily ever after as I would write the script. And yet, that's the way it works. And so, we in our own journey, as we're relating in homes, and our homes as leaders and things like that, we need to kind of keep that in mind. That the miracle is not that our child won't be tempted with drug use, or somebody that we love won't get cancer. The miracle is that the God of the universe is walking beside us through those particular aspects of life and is there, if we listen, to tell us what the next step is. And we often say to God, can't you tell me 7 steps ahead? You know, and a lot of times, you know, God doesn't tell me 7 to 10 steps ahead. He tells us, doesn't he, the very next step. Now, I'm a bit confused today, and so I'm going to tell you how I'm going to fix the problem. I'm confused on what particular talk I'm going to give you. Okay, because when I looked at the theme of covering your family and home, I go, is it this talk or is it this talk? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in this workshop, talk about one area of covering your family. And then the next workshop, it's going to be different. I'm going to talk about another angle on it because I kept going, do I give this talk or do I give this talk? And the answer is, I'm going to give both talks. So it's just the way it is. Now, let's begin in prayer. God, we just thank you for bringing us all together, and we know that you have a reason for it. And we ask that you will speak to us in this next period of time in a way that we can learn what you want us to do and be within our families as we cover our families in a way that spiritually they can see Jesus. Amen. Now, as a psychologist, I am often, I would see 50, 60 clients a week, okay? And actually a lot of my men's material is a result of, for 25 years I prayed, God, give me a chance to try to help this man whose wife was there to kill him in the session, and whose children were also often very, very disgusted with his leadership. And so a lot of what we wrote in the Knights program, which I'm the author of, is teaching men some of these principles that I felt if they had instituted them in their family, they wouldn't necessarily have needed to come and see me. But many, many times, because James Dobson and different groups would send clients to me, different organizations, different denominations, the man would come in and sit down, and he would say to me, tell her that I am the head of the home. Okay? And this has happened hundreds of times. Roy, you come here, the pastor told me to come, and you tell her that I am the head of the home. Now, I noticed every time he would say this, and I looked at the wife's eyes, she did not smile and she was not happy. Okay? She would, and I go, this is not good. In other words, use your power to convince her, whatever power I have or don't have, of influence, to convince her that I am in charge. Now, a lot of times in my own spiritual life, and I'm not saying that this is good, but I'm just being honest with you. I find I'm the guy, in the parable that says to God, I'm not going to do it, and then does it. I'm more likely to be that guy than the guy that right away, says, yeah, Lord, send me. About 2 years ago, one of our knights came back from a conference, and he said, Roy, this guy wants you to come and speak to the churches in Argentina. And my first godly response was, Adam, I am not going to go to Argentina. There's just no way I'm a Pennsylvania boy. I'll wander into Delaware on the way to Maryland. I was once in Canada. Strange country that is. And I once, when I was getting my PhD, wandered over for a day in Tijuana. I have had my multicultural experience. I am not going to Argentina. And then God, I made the mistake, however, of praying. Okay? And including God as an afterthought, I might add, in the decision. Because I had already told Adam several times, I am not going to Argentina. So I disagree with God a lot. And I'm here to tell you God's right. But I think if we own it, we disagree with God a lot. And we don't have time today, but I will share with you, let you know that I did make it to Argentina. And now we're putting nights into Spanish because I discovered a lot of men over there do not respect their women. They abuse them. And I saw a lot of pain in the women, and the men were owning what they were doing. And part of what Knights teaches is a sense of honor and that your goal is to protect the hearts of all women. Another area that I disagree with God, and this whole thing isn't going to be about, how wrong I am disagreeing with God, but here's one. When the man comes and says this to me, tell her I'm the head of the house, I usually look at him and say, I hate being the head of the house. In fact, if I was God, I would agree with God. If I was God, I would have the women be the head of the house. And the guy looks at me like I'm nuts. And I go, in Ephesians, it clearly says, we lead like Christ leads. And when Christ or God puts you in charge, you're the first guy to get shot. God calls you to sacrifice your needs in order to meet her needs. This is inconvenient and oftentimes unpleasant. To take it a step further, it means on a Saturday, because God has put me in charge, I have to go to areas of the country where there are all these little shops that have all these little things that people can look at for hours, which I have no understanding why or how they're that interesting. And I have to go from this one that looks exactly the same as that one. And I got to go, wow, that's an interesting, what is it? And if my wife was in charge by God, we'd be going to the Philadelphia Phillies every other week. But that's not what we're called to do. And I look at the guy who says, tell her I'm in charge. And I have to say, sadly, sir, you are. And we're told how to take care of our families. And that is that we treat them like Jesus. So Jesus says, I don't want to die. Jesus says, I don't need to die for my sin. I'm sinless. And Jesus says to God, whatever you want, I'll do it. And so part of us guiding our families is taking the leadership that God has called us for and taking it seriously. Now, this is not a natural act. This is not a natural act. Because we do not sacrifice ourselves easily because we have the human problem of self-centeredness. Or another way to put it is, if I eat of that tree, I will be as smart as God. The ultimate self-centeredness. So we want to think about ourselves. And God tells us to lead our families, which means that we die to our self-centeredness and we move in the direction of meeting those our family's needs. And this is not a natural thing for us. It's not natural for us because we have an active sin nature within us that sends us in a direction whereby we all have the secret wish to be God. We all have a secret wish to be God. Go home and tell your family. I went today to a seminar, and it taught me how to think about myself more, how to affirm myself more. It taught me how important I am. It taught me how I should think more narcissistically about myself. And then look at their faces and see if any of them think that you needed a seminar like that. Most of them would say, you're already pretty good at it. You don't need a seminar on how to compliment yourself. You need a seminar on learning how to become vulnerable and complimenting her or your child. So, it doesn't come natural. Now, somebody have a Bible here? All right. Can you look up the fruits of the Spirit? And read I think it's Galatians 6, 5:6? 5:22, okay. Get ready to read that. Now, in the book, The Male Brain, okay, it talks about the testosterone in a man. The testosterone in a man. And it says that if testosterone was alcohol, okay, a 5-year-old boy would have 2.5 ounces of alcohol in his system. So the hormone that we all have as males, women have it too, but males tend to have more, flowing through our bloodstream. If it was alcohol and the child is 5 years old, the male child, he would have 2.5 ounces of alcohol in him. Okay? If the male child, when the male gets to be 15 years old, it will be like he has 2.5 gallons of alcohol. So testosterone is a pretty powerful ingredient within us. And what I like, and keep in mind, who gave us testosterone? God. God gave us testosterone. Okay? And he gave us one amount at age 5, and boy did he turn it up around 15. So what I'd like my brother to do is to stand up and read the fruits of the Spirit. Okay? And then I'm going to describe testosterone. And we're going to see if testosterone helps us in the direction of the fruits of the Spirit or it doesn't. Go ahead. Thank you, sir.
But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Thus, who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions, and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking, and envying each other.
All right. Okay, so the fruits of the Spirit. All right. So let us look at what testosterone does. Okay, and what we're talking about is why it's not natural for us to be good at what God calls us to do, which is to cover our families on a spiritual level. Okay? Number one characteristic, these are not in order of importance. Okay? One characteristic of testosterone is self-centeredness. Okay? It's thinking about yourself. Another characteristic. Okay, is that pro or go like this? Is that pro the fruits of the Spirit, self-centeredness, or against? All right, let's go to this one. It helps with aggression. It makes us aggressive. Is that pro the Spirit or against the Spirit? All right, another characteristic. It causes us, and watch how you do this, okay? Watch how you do this, okay? It causes you, upon meeting other people, to size them up and decide where they are in the chain of importance and status seeking. Okay? So you look at somebody and you immediately make a judgment, and almost like you'd be in a pack, and you go, that guy's strong, that guy's weak, and you start to make judgments about their value based on status. Is that pro or against the fruits of the Spirit? Okay? The first time I started speaking at men, I would just walk in and start to talk. Okay, and I spent a year doing this. All right? And, well, actually, I've been speaking for my whole life in different ways. But when I created nights, I went on the road to talk to men's groups. And I would just come in and I would talk. All right? And then I watched the impact, and it would help, but no. And then I thought, this is stupid. But I've got to come in, and I've got to say, this is who I am. I'm a doctor. This is who I am. I started a company. I have 600 and some employees. This is who I am. I have these degrees. This is who I am. Because to hear my message, males are categorizing whether or not they're going to even bother listening. Okay? And I went, this is crazy. But I've got to do it, or I'm not going to have the level of impact I want, and I'm going to fly into an area, I'm going to do my thing and leave, and I can't go everywhere. So I got to try to make the impact as strong as possible. Well, we do this, and then I look within myself, and upon meeting a guy, I go, he's worth talking to, he's not worth talking to. And we make these constant judgments. And when you look at Jesus, who says, let the children come to me. Okay? Now, we know God made testosterone, and we're going to have a few more characteristics about testosterone just so you understand who you are. But the ultimate answer to this is what the speaker this morning said. We have to rely upon Jesus to deal with our testosterone. Another aspect of testosterone is territorialness. Okay? We create territories. Okay? And you can see that the territorialness of males. And one of the reasons why a lot of churches, we have a book out there called Why Not Try to Hit the Target. A lot of churches have trouble. Only 10% of all churches have a strong men's ministry. 10%. Barnard study says that 93% of all Christian males, the men, will tell you they don't have another good Christian man buddy to talk to or be accountable to. One of the aspects of testosterone is defensiveness and social isolation. When a deer is walking through the woods alone, it is more likely to be a buck. When the herd is coming, it is more likely to be doe unless the buck is at the end, and why is he following the women? Characteristic of testosterone is a constant sexual spark. A constant sexual spark. And it doesn't discriminate regarding the woman I'm married to versus any other woman. A constant sexual spark. That spark is so reliable, okay, that people have come to me and said, Roy, let's say I'm having trouble getting an erection, okay? And I help them work through the trauma or whatever the issues are in being able to have a healthy sexual relationship with their wife, okay? And one of the things we can do is we can hook them up at night, okay, to a machine. And we know this, that if they go all night long without any erections, it's medical. There's not a thing I can do to help them through it. Because with the man's eyes closed in the middle of the night, he is having 5 to 7 erections. What happens when his eyes open? That spark. Some guys believe in fantasy. That spark. The point of this is that again, when I say God has called us to sacrifice and lead like Christ, we have the sin nature, we have the self-centeredness, which is from the sin nature, and God gave us a biology, and He has said, you need to depend upon me to be able to be faithful to that woman till death do you part. Because if you don't walk with me, you got some things in there. And you might say, well then why, God, did you put them in there? Because they're the exact characteristics I need for a spiritual warrior. The exact characteristics I need for a spiritual warrior. When I go into battle, and I'm called by God in a culture that's ungodly to go into battle, those characteristics, and defend my home, and the ideas in this ungodly culture that are trying to enter my home's world, I need to have that aggression. I need to be able to fight firmly for what truth is. So, you have that. The isolation piece, why is only 10% of all churches have a strong men's ministry? It's because of that. And it's because what we need as men is for a men's ministry to be super effective, we have to meet on a regular basis. We have to meet weekly. Okay? Now, what do we know about life? We know this, that if suddenly all the women in the world disappeared, Hallmark would not exist, because I'm not sending you a card. All right? I'm not sending you a card. And when I hear it's your birthday, I'm going to say someday when I see you, I'm going to say, hey, 3 months ago I heard it was your birthday. Happy birthday. But suddenly attacked by Satan and I lose my job, or some other negative thing occurs, I say to myself, someday when I see Joe, I'm going to tell Joe what happened. I'm not calling Joe. I don't care how bad I'm hurting. I'm not calling Joe. So we have to meet on a regular basis in order for us to have the excuse to do what's right. We travel the country and I say, name 6 men that if life crashed in on you, like just happened to me with Nick, that you could call around the clock and they'd have your back. The average man can't name one when we ask that question. We say at the end of nights you'll have 6. But the only way it works is you have to be able to overcome that sense of isolation. And that means you have to see the man about 15 to 20 times and know he's not going to go away before you make him into a brother. Your name? Jim. Okay, so Jim and I are in church group together. And why am I going this route? Because for me to relate to my wife and be the best father I can be, how change is going to occur, I need to do it in relationship with another man. I will not get as far with a woman because women are different from men. Women have a problem. Okay? We're going to keep it in here. Do not share this at home. But a woman will always ask you one more question than you were planning on answering. Isn't that right? So you will decide to share. You will decide to share, all right? And I'll be sharing. Because I have to think of sharing with my wife. Because if I don't, what's the answer? Roy, how was your day? The answer is? Good. Fine, good. Yeah. You know? And it could have been, I could have been hit by 6 trucks that day. Boom, boom, boom. How was your day? It was fine. If I went through 6 trucks, I don't want to talk to you and make it 7. Alright? Now this is all stuff we don't talk about, but you're laughing for a reason. You recognize that little voice inside of you. Alright? Okay. So I go to church with Jim. Alright? He's in my men's group. And because my wife is going to always ask me more questions, I don't tell her anything unless I'm sure I know really what's good and right. Because I have a male ego, and I can't stand being wrong. Okay? That's my problem. But she pays for it. But I walk into church, and Jim and I are in a group. And this is what I do. I walk in, and the very first thing I do, metaphorically speaking, not literally, metaphorically, is I pee a line right down the middle between me and Jim. And I say, Jim, that's your side, and this is my side. Now, Jim doesn't know I'm peeing. You know why? Because he's busy peeing. You know, we all look up at each other. We're just drawing a line. Jim's saying, I'm only going to get so close to Roy, which is interesting because in James it says, confess your sin one to another. Now that's really likely to happen when I'm peeing and he's peeing, and we're dividing each other off relationally. Not likely that we follow that verse, right? But we do it. And then every week, I see Jim in my men's group. And I go through 3 stages. in the book. Influence, inclusion, and another one. But the bottom line is we approach each other, and eventually I start to be more real. He's a Patriots fan, I'm an Eagles fan. We somehow get through that, and we work through the different stages of stuff. And then around 15 to 20, on a weekly basis, a weird thing happens. I walk in the gym, and instead of peeing, I do this. I pee around Jim. He's in my territory. He's my brother, and I defend him. But it's going to take us 15 to 20 sessions, forced to be together. And if we really, and we don't always want to do it, and we'll come up with every excuse imaginable, because this is a scary thing. And Jesus, the God of the universe, said, I have 12 disciples. I have Martha, Mary, Lazarus. I've got all kinds of relationships. And oh, by the way, this is how I want you, Christian man, to do relationships. And it's not this way. It's working through enough reality with your wife and child. But you first got to do it with other men, because they're easier, and make them into your territory. And now we relate. And now I can confess my sin. And now when something happens, I know on a regular basis, I may not call him, I may not send him a card. And he gets to know me. And now through that kind of connection and a men's group, and working together, I take those skills. See, because I can go out, there's a thing that, sir, what's your name? Nate. Nate and I have an agreement. We have never met. This is a magic act. And he is part of it. When Nate and I have an agreement, when I in group start to share, when Nate shares his life with me, and I start to ask for more, when Nate is done giving me more, all he does is he gives me a look. He gives me a look. And I know that if I ask him one more question past the look, a part of Nate is going to show up called testosterone aggression that is not something I particularly want to face. And Nate says, I've shared all I feel comfortable with. I dare you to go beyond that. Now, I don't want to go beyond that. One, I don't want Nate to kill me. Two, I want Nate to stop when I give him the look. Women never see the look. They're going to keep coming. But Nate and I have this agreement. And because of that, if I can get Nate into my territory by seeing him enough, I can go, Nate, the other day, when I was thinking about the person at work, the woman, I think I wasn't having godly thoughts. And I can go into the hypothetical, I can go into stuff that's hard to talk about, because I know that Nate will listen, and when I go, that's enough, that Nate will give me my space. And so I go out on thin ice, and over time, it becomes thick ice because I start to have shared it with somebody versus keeping it up in my own head, which just keeps everything messed up. And then eventually what happens is I'll eventually share some of the thick ice with my wife. And women will say, when they see this happening with their men in churches, I want you to go to the church and stick with your men's group, because you're sharing different with me at home. Now, what we don't tell the woman is, well, if you think Nate shared with you, then Nate's wife, Nate tells me even more. We don't say that. But reality is, when the man starts to become comfortable with it, and there's that process. So we have to recognize that becoming the godly man God has called us to be in the home demands that we have men as God's representatives in our lives. Because sometimes the abstraction of God being there in the abstract, is not enough. That God uses Nate as God in my life. Nate, the God that loves Nate, that Nate is inside Nate. God gives Nate the right words to say to me. And that is God literally using Nate to change my life. And that's why this role of covering in the church and your family is so important. If I give a kid a psychological test, and I say to the kid, tell me the description of God. And what's God like? And the kid gives me all these characteristics of God. And then I say to the kid, okay, 2 weeks later, give me a description of Dad. And then we look at these descriptions, they're the same. So when you as a father or a grandfather are in that family's life, you are a representative of God. So we send our children into Sunday school, not against Sunday school, for 1 hour to hear the beautiful stories of the Bible and God. And then they go home. And we, in our presence, in our home, we're God. We are communicating who God is to our family. And how many women and boys have I dealt with in therapy that say, you know, my dad never said he loved me. So can we, when we're talking about God, Roy, can you not call God Father? Because when you call God Father, it messes me up. Because it connects me with my earthly father, who never complimented me, never told me I was good enough, and never said he loved me. When God calls us to go into our families and cover for them, we need to be like God. And the messages that we reflect to them is that they are valuable, that they are loved. And we might have to at times suffer the same way God does, in the sense that God loves us, and sometimes we reject God. And sometimes we can say that godly, valuing sentence to our child or to our wife, and we may not get the answer we want back. But that doesn't mean that we stop saying we love them. It means that the testosterone that has made me tough causes me to say, I'm going to keep asking my wife out on dates until she says yes. I'm going to keep saying I love my child. I'm going to keep doing this, and it's not dependent on their response. It is who I am called by God to be. It's not up for a vote. Not up for a vote. Well, that's our introduction to the talk. Things are flying along here. Okay. How much more time?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. That's what I thought. That's just dandy. All right. We'll do a different talk next week. Maybe I'll get to it. Let's have fun in 3 minutes. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do something. All right, now keep in mind, I'm a shrink. The definition of a shrink is I'm allowed to be weird. I went to school for it. Okay? And what I want you to do is I'm going to count to 3. And when I say 1, I want you to stand up if you can. 2, I want you to go like this. See it? All right. If you do it differently, we will not yell at you. And when I say 3, so 2 is this, and you bend over. Like this. And when I say 3, I want you to go up with your hands, and I want you to make the loudest bull elephant noise you ever made in your life. Now this is good for you. Air in, air out. It's kind of a wellness kind of thing we can call it. And you probably never really specialized in bull elephant noise before. So just do your version of the loudest bull elephant noise you can. Then you sit down. I'm going to talk to you for 1.5 minutes, and our 3 minutes are up. You got it? 1, 2, 3. All right, sit back down. Okay. In Africa, they had a business plan. The business plan was this. Let's fence in millions of acres. True story. Let's fence in millions of acres. And then let's go like Noah's Ark and find all these animals. Let's put them inside the fence where they cannot leave. And then let's get people like us to come over and eat the food, take the pictures, drive around in Jeeps, and we could see all the animals in a big zoo. But everything was natural. The lions ate the zebras in this zoo. Okay? And so suddenly they have a problem. They have a problem because the elephants are squishing the rhinoceroses at the water hole. They're knocking them off. And because there's not enough rhinos in this world, this was a problem. You couldn't just go out and get more. And they got all their scientists together, and they said, why are these rhinos being killed by elephants inside this fence when out in the animal kingdom they drink the water beside each other and nothing happens? What makes us so doggone lucky? And what they figured out was this. They said, when we went out and got elephants, we went out and got a bunch of elephants. They were 15-year-old male elephants. And 15-year-old male elephants are adolescent elephants. They're adolescent. They didn't know what a man is. They had no idea. They thought squishing rhinos is what made you a man. Because there was no man around to teach these sons what a man was. They went outside the fence. They got 3 30-year-old bull elephants. They stuck them inside the fence, and they watched them. And nothing happened, except for the fact that the rhinos quit dying. See, because those big boys said to those little boys, this is what a man is. This is what a godly man is. It's not what the culture calls men. Simple, sexual, aggressive. That's not what a godly man is. This is what a man is. And the rhinos were happy, and life went on. You are all honorary bull elephants. We live in a culture where so many young men in our families and around us have had no mentors. They're making up manhood. And when they make up manhood, somebody gets hurt. Them, and it's usually somebody else. God has called you as His honorary bull elephant to cover your family's males by teaching them what manhood is, and then to adopt neighbor kids or all the kids God puts in your way so that you can teach them who God is. Let's pray. God, I just ask that you will help my brothers hear what you wanted them to hear this day. And instead of it being something that they enjoyed or floats in their head, make it work its way down to our feet. Teach us how to put into action your words this day. In Jesus' name, amen. I'll be glad to talk with you. I'll be back by the booth. In the booth, you will see